Stop me, 'cause I'm having a good time, having a good time. I'm a shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a racing car.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Whatcast, your source for competitive Shadespire analysis. Okay, so in this video we're going to continue our look at the Spiteclaw Swarm expansion for Warhammer Underworld Shadespire. This time we're going to be taking a good look at the universal upgrade cards that come with the set and trying to analyze how they're going to affect the meta going forward. Now, the purpose of this video series is to get my immediate, unvarnished opinions immediately upon seeing these cards. I have done no research before this. I've literally just opened up this pack. This is the first time I am seeing any of these cards unless they have been shown previously on Warhammer Community. Okay, so we'll move right along. Our first universal upgrade is Shade Step. This fighter can move through other fighters during a move action, but must end their move in an empty hex. Okay, this is an ability we had previously only seen available for the Sepulchral Guard, and we're seeing a lot more fast-moving, objective-grabbing decks in the meta between Khorne Bloodbound and Spiteclaw Swarm. So this goes right along with that. This negates the enemy's defensive line. It's also going to weaken the entire concept of a defensive line, and it's going to force defensive players to react really well. And again, in any strategic game like this, you're definitely going to want to try to force your opponent to make difficult decisions. I particularly like this with regard to Spiteclaw Swarm because of their numerous abilities to pop around behind enemy lines. You can surround your enemy and force them to deal with attacks on both fronts. So, great stuff right off the bat. I would not really see using it for, say, Stormcast or anybody with a slower than 4 movement. Okay, up next we have Awakened Weapon. You can re-roll 1 attack dice each time this fighter makes an attack action. Okay, so right off the bat it doesn't seem extremely powerful, but this is something that if you get it in the early game is going to provide benefits over the long run, over a great number of attacks. Particularly if you have an attack that is very powerful but not necessarily that accurate, such as Fuel Grimnir's Latch Axe, or any huge attack. I'm thinking also like Bloodied Sake's Great Axe. I feel like, though, this is going to really come into its own, or perhaps awaken, in combination with other cards. For example, there was one shown on Warhammer Community that I believe we'll see later in this video that gives a very powerful but very inaccurate attack. Combining these two would be a great move. Okay. Acrobatic. If this fighter has a dodge defense characteristic or has a shield defense characteristic but is on guard, roll an extra defense dice when they are the target of an attack action. Okay, so this is going to be very great for Sepulchral Guard. It's going to be great for Spiteclaw Swarm. It's going to be great for Khorne Bloodbound. Especially, I'm immediately thinking of the build where you stack defense upgrades on Garrett Gorebeard to make him nigh on unkillable. It's essentially a situational +1 defense, but the situation is easy to control, and it can be easily built around in terms of your deck. So definitely a strong option if you're playing a dodge-centric faction. Okay, Hero Slayer. Like I was saying just a moment ago with Awakened Weapon, this is an attack, 1 range, only 1 die, which is a hammer. and 4 damage. That is going to one-shot anything in the game except for an Awakened Fuel or Inspired Fuel Grimnir and Gurzag. Adding Awaken Weapon as a combination to that. The interesting thing is this can turn a chaff unit into an absolute business doer. For example, think about putting this on one of your petitioners if you're playing Sepulchral Guard, using it as a threat that your opponent is going to have to deal with or lose his leader unit. And then as soon as they do deal with it, just resurrect them and reuse these upgrades. Could also be good with the Fireslayer Legacy upgrade. Sorry, that's a universal upgrade in the Fireslayer expansion. This could be even better. In fact, I would love to use these with Skaven, actually. Because after they get killed, which your opponent is probably going to try to immediately kill this person, you can just resurrect them in a starting hex in their back line. Keep in mind that Spiteclaw Swarm is able to deploy onto, or resurrect onto any starting hex. It doesn't have to be in your territory. That's a very strong option. I think we're going to see this one pop up a lot. And you're going to want to, if you're not going to use this yourself, or even if you are, you're going to need to think of ways to respond to this, and especially in combination with this. I'm already super excited about that. Okay. Sprinter. +1 move. Very simple, but where this becomes exciting is that we already have several different named cards that increase move value. You've got Legendary Swiftness, Great Speed, this guy, and then there's also many faction-specific cards that are going to increase Swiftness. You can really surprise your opponent by stacking these movement bonuses onto a very slow character, such as Sepulchral Guard, Warden, or Champion, or Prince of Dust, whatever, and run around grabbing objectives, doing damage in weak spots in your enemy's line. Again, more of that same style of play. And where this becomes important is it's going to open up a lot more options for builds that haven't worked because of the slowness of their warbands. Or because of the distance that objectives can be from each other. It's also going to be a great way for, say, Ironjaws or Stormcast to respond to being longboarded. Ethereal Shield. This fighter's defense characteristic changes to Shield. Okay, so we've seen this particular ability as a specific card for Sepulchral Guard called Remembered Shield. It's not super useful for them, but now opening this up as a universal upgrade could make it very useful for a number of factions that use dodge as their defense dice. Particularly with Spiteclaw Swarm, because so many of them are able to get into 2 dice territory. Suddenly changing those into shields is going to make them extremely difficult to take down. Also, if you're doing a Khorne's Champion build around Garruk, Garruk has a lot of defense bonuses, but is still stuck on dodge. This could change that, but I wouldn't try to combine that with Acrobatic because both of these are going to be at cross purposes. Great stuff for very specific warbands and very specific builds. Alright, we have yet another key. This one is for Objective 5. In the 3rd end phase, score 2 glory points. I've spoken about how effective the key upgrades are. They're okay. The biggest problem that you're going to have is that there are a lot of specific moving parts. It's very easy to counter, and it's also an incredibly telegraphed move. As soon as I see you put this on somebody, my number one objective is going to be preventing you from scoring this. The reason why I really want to prevent you from scoring this is it's a way to get 2 glory points, but without using an objective card. It's effectively a way to spend your existing upgrade tokens for more glory points. That being said, something that just occurs to me now, you can use this as a fake out, especially if you put this on a fast chaff unit and put that chaff unit near objective 5 where he could theoretically move on to it in one turn. This is going to force your opponent to react to it. So that's definitely a possible move. And if they don't react to it, well, then you can just go score 2 glory points. I'm turning around on these. I want to say that there's now a full set of 5 of them at this point. I might be wrong. I definitely don't see putting all of these in your deck unless you have an extremely capable objective grabbing build. Actually, that might be interesting. Perhaps like a Shade Collar style or Shard Collar style deck that was built around using the keys to have a commanding lead at the end of the game. Interesting. That might be overcommitting a little bit. I would love to hear people's opinions on this. Feel free to comment down below if you disagree with my analysis on this. Yeah, the key strategy might be interesting in the future. Usually, though, I expect we're only going to see 1 or 2 sprinkled in. Okay, Tricksters Charm. If this fighter is on the battlefield, you can play a single ploy at the beginning of each action phase. Okay, wow. So, this upgrade has very few moving parts to get in your way. You just need to have this on somebody on the battlefield. They don't need to be in a particular position. And this has a great effect on a natural, like, point of tactical decision. So when you are choosing in each action phase to go first or second, one of the big parts of that decision is when are you going to have an opportunity to play ploys. We've all had situations where we're standing there perplexed because if we choose to go first, then we're spending one of our activations before setting up whatever condition we're trying to achieve with our ploy. But if we go second, then we're offering the opponent, one, an opportunity to have an activation before we engage our new board state that we're going for with a ploy, or we're giving them an opportunity to play a ploy themselves or an upgrade. Now, there's also something important to mention here. It specifies that you can play a ploy at the beginning of the action phase, not an upgrade, not a power. Again, this strikes me as one of those cards like Time Trap that is going to be extremely difficult to use well, but if you pull it off well and use it efficiently, this could be game-changing. Definitely a card for the experienced, seasoned tactical player. Okay, here we have one more of our Cata Frame parts, and I believe this brings us up to 4. I need to check again because I haven't really paid much attention to the Cata Frame set prior to now, and I won't talk much about this here because I've already discussed that extensively in our Chosen Axes Universal Upgrades video, and I'll put a link here for that. But whatever I might have said about that goes the same for this. Now, just in case I'm miscounting, and there are already 6 Cata Frame relics in the game. If we did manage to get all 6 Cata Frame relics on one character, this becomes interesting because one, it's going to be almost impossible to do because you're going to need to have 6 glory points at some point in the game. B, you're going to need to have all of these cards show up in your hand early enough for them to be effective. And C, you're going to have to keep the person with all these relics alive. If I see that you're starting to stack up a number of these upgrades on a single character, I'm going to go immediately for annihilating that character. Now, that opens up some options if you're doing, say, Spiteclaw Swarm or Sepulchral Guard. Okay, yes, you've killed my guy that I've been stacking objectives on. I can just bring him back. But that's going to slow you down in terms of your activations. Alternately, you could use this on a deck focused around dumping upgrades onto a single character, as I call them Superman decks. However, by putting all 6 of the Cata Frame relics into your deck, then you've only got 4 slots to put in other upgrades to improve that character's survivability. But if you manage to accomplish all those moving parts, your reward is that you can just start spending actions to gain glory points, and you can do that with every single action, and it's specifically to gain 4 glory points. The short answer is this is a win condition card. This is going to change the whole game that you're playing in your strategy. Once this happens, you have won the game. Period. Full stop. There's going to be no coming back from this. They could table you at that point, but by then you've probably already spent enough actions to get enough glory points to be way ahead of your opponent. But this sort of thing is going to define how your deck is built. The only thing it's not going to define is the strategy that you use personally to accomplish that. In terms of tournaments, I doubt that we're going to see a Cata Frame relic based deck be anything but a gatekeeper. And I've spoken about gatekeepers before. This is a common idea in other styles of tournament. For example, like 40k tournaments, Age of Sigmar tournaments, where a certain build is very powerful, but your advanced players are going to have a way around it, and a very consistent way around it. In other games, this is referred to as like a first order optimal strategy, and typically these builds are only ever going to get to the middle tables. They're never going to succeed to the point where they're going to be at the top tables. Worth considering. I would not expect, because there will be a net deck that will come out based around Cata Frames. I would not expect that to be a substitute for proper strategy and understanding of the meta. Okay, last one. Yet another Shade Glass weapon. Okay. Like the other Shade Glass weapons, this one is going to be discarded as soon as you smack somebody with it. You're going to get +1 damage on critical hit, and that's a one range, 2 hammers, 3 damage. A good choice for chaff, to make a disposable chaff unit suddenly very dangerous and require the attention of your opponent. My problem with it is it's a one-shot. You're spending a lot of resources in order to pull off this one-shot, both in terms of the glory point you spend to put this in and the space this is going to take up in your deck. At the same time, having in a game with 12 activations, forcing your opponent to break off and go attack a chaff just because they've got a dangerous weapon is going to buy you a lot of time. And this does seem to me like one of the stronger Shade Glass weapon options. Okay, so that is the last of the universal upgrades that come in the Spiteclaw Swarm set. Some very interesting stuff in here. I can't wait to see what these are going to do to the meta and do to existing builds. If nothing else, this is going to shake up the existing power structures, which I can't wait to see because it's going to greatly prevent the Shadespire scene from getting stale at all. Okay, so we'll be moving on from here. In our next video, we're going to look at the Shadeclaw or Spiteclaw's Swarm universal ploys. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more Warhammer Underworld's Tactics content, and we'll see you in the next video.